welcome back to our channel on this beautiful day. We are so excited to sit down and unravel the latest mysteries of Genoa City with you all. Grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's dive into some of the most shocking theories currently circulating. You know, when we really sit down and take a long, hard look at the current landscape of Genoa City, it is almost overwhelming to process the sheer amount of emotional turbulence happening right now. I have been thinking so much about Kyle Abbott lately, and just how drastically his life has shifted over these past few months. It is actually quite heartbreaking when you pause and consider everything he has been forced to shoulder. He is no longer the carefree, somewhat naive young man we used to know. He has been thrust into this incredibly dark, unforgiving role. A ruthless protector for his father, Jack. With Diane completely betraying Jack, stealing the Abbott mansion, and leaving Jack financially and emotionally ruined, Kyle has had to step up in ways that are deeply altering his fundamental character. We saw him aggressively threaten Patty Williams with permanent solitary confinement, and it just makes you realize that Kyle's heart is hardening. He is building these massive, impenetrable walls around himself, and when a person builds walls like that, when they become consumed by the need to control and protect, their romantic needs inevitably shift as well. I keep coming back to his relationship with Claire Newman. Kyle really held out hope for so long, didn't he? He poured so much of his energy into the idea that he and Claire could eventually find their way back to each other, that they could heal the fractures in their relationship. But lately, it really feels like Kyle has reached a point of quiet, heavy acceptance. He is looking at the reality of the situation, and he is realizing that the door to Claire's heart might be closing for good. It is a painful realization. You can almost feel the silent grief he carries when he is alone. He has been so consumed by the war to save his father's marriage and sanity. But in the quiet moments, the loss of Claire has to sting in a very profound way. And it is not just a passive loss. Either, we are actively seeing a shift in Claire's orbit. It is impossible to ignore the growing connection between Claire and Holden Novak. Holden is stepping into the picture, carrying his own massive family drama with the Winters clan. And Claire has become this safe, empathetic harbor for him. They are sharing these quiet, vulnerable moments, and it is drawing Claire's attention away from the past and toward a new, unexpected future. And then you add Dr. Stephanie Simmons into the mix. Stephanie is aggressively pushing for Claire to be with her son, making it abundantly clear that she prefers Claire 1,000 times over Audra Charles. The pressure is mounting. The pieces are moving, and Kyle has to see the writing on the wall. He has to know that Claire is being pulled into a new narrative, one where he no longer plays the leading role. I think, deep down, he has completely accepted that their romance is over. But that acceptance leaves a massive, gaping void in his life. A void that is desperately aching to be filled. This brings us to a theory that has been wildly circulating on social media lately. A theory that, at first glance, feels absolutely scandalous, but when you really stop and think about it, it starts to make a bizarre, intoxicating kind of sense. We are talking about the growing speculation surrounding Kyle Abbott and Victor Newman. Yes, Victor Newman, Claire's mother. I know. It sounds completely out of left field, but is it really? Let us just take a moment to breathe and unpack the subtle, undeniable signs that the writers might be planting for us. Fans have been pointing out that Kyle and Victoria are suddenly sharing a surprising amount of screen time. It feels like everywhere Victoria goes, Kyle is just there. They are constantly crossing paths, having these brief, tense, yet oddly charged encounters. In the world of daytime television, proximity is never an accident. Proximity is destiny. When the characters are repeatedly placed in each other's orbit, a spark is almost inevitable. I cannot help but think back to New Year's Eve, that specific moment they shared. It was brief, yes, but there was an underlying intimacy to it that felt entirely out of place for two people who are supposed to just be corporate acquaintances. They shared a drink, they shared a look. And in that quiet moment before the new year began, it felt like two incredibly lonely, highly stressed individuals recognizing the exhaustion in each other's eyes. It was a subtle shift, but it planted a seed in the minds of the viewers. And since then, the tension has only escalated. The corporate warfare in Genoa City is reaching a boiling point. Victor Newman is executing this ruthless, AI-driven plot to completely destroy Phyllis Summers and reclaim Newman Enterprises. And Victoria is standing right by his side, acting as his cold, calculating general. The pressure she is under must be absolutely astronomical. Victoria is living in this icy, high-stakes world where any display of vulnerability is seen as a fatal weakness. She is constantly strategizing, constantly fighting. and it has to be taking a massive toll on her psyche. We all know Victoria. She projects this image of an untouchable ice queen, but beneath that exterior, she is a woman who craves passion, connection, and release. And right now, she is completely devoid of those things. Her romance with Nate Hastings, well, let us be honest, it feels like it has hit a massive brick wall. It seems completely dead in the water. Nate is entirely consumed by the profound medical crisis involving Malcolm Winters. With Kane Ashby miraculously stepping up as a bone marrow match, Nate is deeply entangled in the emotional fallout and the shifting dynamics of the Winters family. He is distracted. He is burdened by his own historical trauma, and he is simply not present for Victoria. She is standing alone at the top of the Newman Tower, completely isolated. So, you have Victoria, isolated, stressed to the breaking point, and craving a release, and you have Kyle, hardened, grieving the loss of Claire, exhausted from protecting his father, and carrying a massive void in his heart. When these highly volatile, incredibly stressed individuals collide, sometimes that immense pressure does not just dissipate. It morphs, it transforms into something completely different. It transforms into dangerous, forbidden passion. It makes you wonder if they are looking at each other and seeing an escape. An escape from the crushing expectations of their respective families. An escape from the grief and the corporate warfare. Sometimes, the most intense affairs are born not out of pure romance, but out of a desperate, mutual need to feel something else. Anything else, other than the crushing weight of reality. But of course, we have to address the massive, scandalous elephant in the room. The sheer taboo of this potential pairing is mind-boggling. Victoria is Claire's mother. Kyle was deeply, profoundly involved with Claire. He fought for Claire. To even fathom the idea of Kyle moving from the daughter to the mother, it is the kind of explosive, jaw-dropping twist that makes soap operas so utterly captivating. It is messy, it is chaotic, it is morally ambiguous, and it is exactly the kind of storyline that would send shockwaves through every single family in Genoa City. I just sit here and try to imagine the psychological fallout, the absolute devastation. If this were to actually happen, it is almost too much to process. Would it be uncomfortable? Absolutely. There is no denying the inherent discomfort of a man sleeping with his former lover's mother, but we also have to remember, Kyle Abbott would certainly not be the first character in the history of daytime dramas to share intimate scenes with both a mother and a daughter. It is a classic soap opera trope, designed specifically to generate maximum conflict and emotional devastation. And as for the age gap between Victoria and Kyle, does it really matter anymore? We have seen significant age gaps embraced on this show before. Just look at the current pairing of Sienna Bacall and Noah Newman. Age is merely a number when it comes to matters of the heart, or matters of pure, unadulterated passion. The writers have proven time and time again that they are not afraid to push boundaries and explore unconventional dynamics if it serves the greater narrative. And no, the narrative potential here is just staggering. I keep running the scenarios through my head. Imagine the sheer, unbridled fury of Victor Newman if he were to discover that his beloved daughter, his corporate heir, was sleeping with Jack Abbott's son. The Newman-Abbott feud has been simmering lately, taking a backseat to internal family squabbles. But an affair between Kyle and Victoria would be the equivalent of dropping a nuclear bomb right in the middle of Genoa City. It would reignite the historical hatred between Jack and Victor in a way we have not seen in years. And think about Jack's reaction. Jack is already playing this incredibly dangerous, high-stakes game by faking a romance with Nikki Newman to make Diane jealous. If he found out his son was actually having a genuine, passionate affair with Victor's daughter. The irony would be almost poetic, the hypocrisy, the anger, the sheer disbelief. It would be television gold. But beyond the patriarchs, the real, devastating collateral damage in this scenario would be Claire. I cannot even begin to fathom the level of betrayal she would feel. To discover that the man she once loved, the man who fought for her soul, has now found comfort in the bed of her own mother, it would be a psychological earthquake. Claire has fought so hard to find stability, to build a relationship with Victoria, to feel like she belongs in the Newman family. An affair between Victoria and Kyle would completely shatter that fragile trust. It would destroy the mother-daughter bond that Victoria has worked so desperately to cultivate. So, you have to ask yourself, why would Victoria ever risk it? Why would she jeopardize her relationship with Claire for a fleeting moment of passion with Kyle Abbott? It is a profound question, and I think the answer lies in the dark, self-destructive tendencies that both Victoria and Kyle are currently harboring. When people are pushed to their absolute limits, when they feel like they are suffocating under the weight of their own lives, they do not always make rational choices. They make choices based on pure, raw impulse. Maybe Victoria is feeling a subconscious resentment toward the perfection she is forced to project. Maybe she wants to blow up her own life just to see what the debris looks like. And Kyle. Maybe Kyle harbors a dark, deeply buried resentment toward Claire for moving on with Holden. Maybe, on some twisted, subconscious level, sleeping with Victoria is a way to hurt Claire. A way to make her feel the sting of loss that he has been quietly enduring. It is a dark, uncomfortable thought. But human beings are infinitely complex, and their motivations are rarely pure. I also think we need to look at the power dynamic between them. It is fascinating to consider. Victoria is an apex predator in the corporate world. She is dominant, authoritative, and completely unapologetic about her power. Kyle, on the other hand, has recently stepped into his own alpha energy. He is no longer the boy seeking approval. He is the man making ruthless threats and protecting his family's legacy. When you put two highly dominant, alpha personalities in a room together, the friction is intense. They are not going to have a sweet, tender romance. If this happens, it is going to be a collision. It is going to be a fiery, combative, intensely passionate affair born out of mutual frustration and a shared understanding of what it means to carry the weight of a legacy. They recognize the darkness in each other, and sometimes that recognition is the most intoxicating aphrodisiac of all. Even if it is just a one-night stand, a single, regrettable moment of weakness fueled by whiskey and exhaustion. The ramifications would be permanent. A secret like that does not just stay buried. It becomes a living, breathing entity that haunts every interaction. Imagine the tension every time they cross paths at society or the athletic club. The lingering glances, the unspoken memories, the terrifying fear of discovery. It would add this incredible layer of suspense to the show. The viewers would be sitting on the edge of their seats, just waiting for the inevitable moment when the truth explodes and destroys everything in its path. And in soap operas, the secret is often just as thrilling as the act itself. But what if it becomes more than just a one-night stand? What if, against all logic and reason, they actually begin to care for one another? What if Kyle finds a sense of maturity and stability in Victoria that he never found in the younger women he has dated? And what if Victoria finds a fierce, uncompromising loyalty in Kyle that she desperately craves? It sounds crazy, but stranger things have happened. If they actually developed genuine feelings, they would be forced to navigate an impossible situation. They would be standing against their families, against Claire, against the entire societal structure of Genoa City. It would be a Romeo and Juliet story, but twisted, dark, and deeply scandalous. I almost want it to happen just to see how they would possibly try to justify it to the world. I keep scrolling through the fan theories, and it is clear that the audience is hungry for this kind of messy, unpredictable drama. We have had a lot of corporate takeovers lately, a lot of business maneuvering with the AI Plus and the company shares. While that is interesting, what we really crave is the raw, visceral human emotion. We crave the forbidden romances, the shocking betrayals, the moments that make us gasp out loud. Kyle and Victoria would deliver that in spades. It would completely reinvigorate both of their characters. Kyle needs a storyline that pulls him out of the shadow of Jack and Diane's marital disaster. He needs a narrative that is entirely his own, something edgy and mature. And Victoria needs a storyline that reminds us she is a passionate, flawed woman, not just Victor's corporate clone. This affair would serve both of those purposes perfectly. Of course, we have to acknowledge the possibility that we are all just reading way too much into this. It is entirely possible that the writers are simply placing them in the same scenes because they are both prominent characters involved in intersecting corporate storylines. Maybe the tension we are seeing is just the natural friction between a Newman and an Abbott. Maybe there is no romantic endgame planned at all, but where is the fun in thinking like that? Half the joy of watching The Young and The Restless is analyzing the subtle clues, predicting the twists, and imagining the most dramatic possible outcomes, and the writers know this. They know how to bait the audience. They know that having Kyle and Victoria share intimate, quiet moments will spark exactly this kind of speculation. They are playing a game with us. And honestly, I am completely here for it. Let us dig a little deeper into Kyle's psyche for a moment. I really want to understand where his head is at. He has been through an absolute emotional meat grinder over the past year. The trauma of discovering his mother, Diane, had faked her death. The struggle to accept her back into his life. The joy of seeing his parents reunite. Only to have it all violently ripped away again by Diane's ultimate betrayal. To watch his father, a man he idolizes, be stripped of his home and his dignity. It has fundamentally broken something inside Kyle. He has lost his faith in the idealized version of love and family. When you lose that faith, you stop looking for fairy tales. You stop looking for the perfect, wholesome romance like he had with Claire. You start gravitating toward things that are real, raw, and perhaps a little bit destructive. Victoria represents that reality. She is not a fairy tale. She is complicated, flawed, and incredibly real. For a man who has just watched his family's fairy tale burn to the ground, a complicated, messy affair might be exactly what he is looking for. And what about Victoria's history? We cannot ignore the pattern of her past relationships. She has a tendency to be drawn to men who challenge her, men who have a bit of a dark side, or men who are intrinsically tied to the complex web of Genoa City's elite. She has tried the safe routes, and they always seem to end in disappointment. Nate was supposed to be a stable, reliable partner, but even that is fizzling out into nothingness. Victoria is a woman who thrives on high stakes. She thrives on adrenaline. An affair with Kyle Abbott would provide a massive rush of adrenaline. It would be a rebellion against the suffocating control her father exerts over her life. Even though she is working closely with Victor right now, there's always the underlying resentment, that desire to prove she is her own woman. Engaging in a highly taboo romance with an Abbott would be the ultimate act of quiet rebellion. It would be a secret that belongs entirely to her, a facet of her life that Victor cannot control or manipulate. I also find myself thinking about the physical chemistry between the actors. When they are on screen together, there is an undeniable spark. It is in the way they hold eye contact just a fraction of a second too long. It is in the slight shift of their body language when they enter the same room. The directors are framing these shots very deliberately. They are making sure we notice the proximity. They are making sure we feel the tension. It is a slow burn, a very slow, deliberate burn. If they are going to pull the trigger on the storyline, they are laying the groundwork perfectly. They are letting the idea simmer in the minds of the audience, allowing us to debate the morality and the shock value of it all before finally crossing the line. Let us imagine, just for a moment, the exact scenario where this happens. I can see it so clearly in my mind. It is late at night. The athletic club is empty. Kyle is sitting at the bar, nursing a scotch, exhausted after another brutal day of dealing with Diane's legal maneuvers and Jack's emotional instability. Victoria walks in, equally exhausted, having just spent hours reviewing the fabricated AI evidence against Phyllis, feeling the heavy, dirty reality of what she is doing to another woman to secure her father's empire. They lock eyes. There are no snarky remarks. There is no corporate posturing. There is just a mutual, silent acknowledgement of their shared misery. She sits next to him. They share a drink. The conversation is low, intimate, stripped of all the usual Genoa City pretense, and then the shift happens. The distance between them closes. The air gets heavy. And before either of them can think about the consequences, before they can think about Claire or Victor or Jack, they give in to the impulse. It is a scene that practically writes itself, and it is dripping with dramatic potential. And the morning after, the morning after would be a masterclass in awkward, terrifying realization. The cool light of day illuminating the massive, catastrophic mistake they just made. The frantic gathering of clothes, the inability to look each other in the eye, the desperate, hushed agreements that this can never, ever happen again. But we all know how these things go. The vow to keep it a one-time mistake only serves to amplify the desire. The secret becomes an obsession. They would find themselves drawn to each other again and again, unable to break the intoxicating cycle of guilt and pleasure. It is the classic anatomy of a soap opera affair, elevated by the sheer, staggering taboo of the mother-daughter connection. I cannot stop thinking about Claire's reaction. I have to circle back to her because she is the emotional core of this potential tragedy. Claire has been through so much trauma in her life. She was manipulated, lied to, and weaponized by her own family in the past. She has finally found a place of relative peace. She is building a bond with Victoria, learning what it means to have a mother who actually cares for her. And she is exploring this sweet, new connection with Holden. For Victoria to betray her in such a profound, intimate way, it would not just break Claire's heart, it would shatter her entire perception of reality. It would validate every deep-seated fear she has ever had about trust and abandonment. Would she revert to her old, dark ways? Would the trauma of this betrayal push Claire over the edge, turning her into a vengeful force against her own mother? The psychological ripple effects are just endless. And let us not forget about Audra Charles in all of this. Audra is currently fuming over Dr. Stephanie Simmons pushing Claire toward Holden. If Claire's world implodes because of a Kyle and Victoria affair, Claire might completely withdraw from Holden, leaving the door wide open for Audra to swoop back in and claim her territory. Audra is a master opportunist. She would use the chaos to her absolute advantage, manipulating the emotional wreckage to secure her own position. Every single character in this town is connected by these invisible threads, and pulling on the Kyle, Victoria thread would unravel the entire tapestry of Genoa City. It really makes you appreciate the intricate, delicate balance the writers have to maintain. They have to weigh the shock value of the affair against the long-term character damage. Can Victoria ever be redeemed in the eyes of the audience if she sleeps with her daughter's ex-boyfriend? It is a massive risk. But then again, Victoria has survived incredibly unpopular decisions before. She is Teflon in many ways. She absorbs the hatred and just keeps moving forward. Kyle, however, might suffer a more severe backlash. The audience has always rooted for Kyle to be the romantic hero, the good guy who ultimately does the right thing. Crossing this line would permanently alter his archetype. He would cross over into the territory of the morally gray, complex anti-hero. It would be a fascinating character evolution, but it would require a complete recalibration of how we view Kyle Abbott. As I sit here and ponder all of these possibilities, I am just filled with this intense sense of anticipation. Whether this theory turns out to be true, or whether it is just the collective wishful thinking of a fan base desperate for scandal, it has certainly sparked a massive, engaging conversation. It has forced us to look at these characters in a new light, to examine their flaws, their desires, and the hidden depths of their loneliness. That is the true magic of the show. It takes these larger-than-life figures, these billionaires and corporate titans, and strips them down to their most vulnerable, human instincts. It shows us that no amount of money or power can protect you from the messy, chaotic, beautiful disaster of human emotion. So we will keep watching. We will analyze every glance, every touch, every loaded line of dialogue between Kyle and Victoria. We will watch Claire and Holden waiting for the other shoe to drop. We will watch Jack and Nikki playing their dangerous game of jealousy. The board is set, the pieces are moving, and the tension is palpable. Whatever happens next, one thing is absolutely certain: Genoa City is on the brink of an emotional explosion, and we would not miss a single second of it. The storm is brewing, my friends, and it is going to be spectacular. I mean, just think about the sheer audacity of it all. It is almost breathtaking. We spend so much time analyzing the business deals, the hostile takeovers, the legal battles. But at the end of the day, it is the matters of the heart that truly drive the narrative. It is the secret desires, the forbidden touches, the moments of weakness that define these characters. Kyle Abbott and Victor Newman, it is a pairing that defies logic, defies morality, and yet it possesses a strange, magnetic pull. It is the kind of storyline that you want to look away from, but you simply cannot. It is a train wreck in slow motion, beautifully lit and perfectly scored. And as we sit here, wrapped up in the speculation, we can only hope that the writers are brave enough to pull the trigger, because if they do, it will be a storyline that we will be talking about for years to come. A true, classic, unforgettable Genoa City scandal. And honestly, isn't that exactly what we all want?